As most of you know, my goal has been to prevent hidden history. And one of the reasons for this avocation of mine is because I worked in a library. I did see in the course of my life certain kinds of irregularities when it came to stories that were kept in the dark. And um, I don't believe that should be the case. I believe we need to be upfront about what has happened. So when we look at something like um, a political system where honesty doesn't even seem to be a consideration, we're asked to compromise when we vote, and it seems almost as if that compromise that we make is one where we adopt and adapt to this dishonesty as our own internalized norm. I don't think that we should do that. Um, it's been said by some in the press, especially when it comes to violent crime, that there are people in our society who mistake and confuse fame with honor. Well, the issue of confusing fame with honor can, can be very um, forceful when it comes to politics, and we need to understand that there is a difference. And one of the professors of black studies with whom I studied in Pittsburgh made the comment that a man being or woman being black is reason enough to vote for them. Well, I do question that because if you look at Hollywood, it was once called the silver screen. The reason they chose silver is because it was based in the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. It glamorized the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and there was a American-born group who were right-wing Nazi types who called themselves the Silver Shirts. They may deny it, but that's also the reason why the Beatles, when they first went to Germany, were calling themselves the Silver Beatles. It was white superiority. And for a long time, in the 20s and 30s, with the exception of Paul Robeson, the role that was given to black people on the silver screen was always um, of a mocking sort, a comical, tragic comic aspect. And so it's important to understand that it's not good enough just to have a black politician. They should be a dignified black politician, not a tragic comic black politician, not a fascist black politician. The University of Pittsburgh, particularly the NAACP there, took a great deal of license when it came to my commentary about Reagan. Reagan had attacked liberalism. He initiated this, and I said this man is not an honorable person. He's not dignified. He's a warmonger. And the confused black administration got all up in arms. We're going to teach him a lesson. And a great deal of crime took place that they're still trying to justify. So, in one of Lee Marvin's films, he was a partner of Ronald Reagan and Errol Flynn. You see him defacing a public monument. And the defacement is, meant to symbolize him as a juvenile delinquent, but it's a public monument. And there's a woman there saying, "How dare you deface a public monument?" It would have been like having him burn the flag. And of course, he laughs about it. So, what's going on is that you have a situation where honesty is necessarily a consideration with the people who are in power and who are making fame. And they want people to be confused about this key issue. So the confusion now takes place in a situation where we have this COVID disaster. And of course, everyone knows I'm notorious for having investigated the AIDS attack, and COVID happened equally mysteriously. So we're dealing with 250,000 laws, people whose votes count but whose lives don't, apparently, when it comes to our policymakers. And Joe Biden is a Pennsylvania politician. He couldn't possibly have not known what I was testifying to there about what happened in Pennsylvania. But he lost his wife and most of his family in a car accident and recently lost one of his sons. So he's considered to be the ideal politician to represent our acceptance of loss in the family and moving on. He's a sympathetic person. He wants to do great things to heal the country of the racial divisions. He wants people to understand that dignified role models for black people is not the same thing as just having a position and having a status as a black person. So we're dealing with a social environment that is very complicated in that way. And we have had some serious disagreements and some difficulties and some violent crime. And one of the things that has been has haunted the situation with me has been the despicable use of me as a white hate object, despite what I offer, and refusal to pay me for my work, the way that rivals exploited my disability to de-victimize me as a person, who might have risen above them if I hadn't been attacked and tortured. So you have the situation of a person who was tortured and who is white, so they say that it doesn't matter. Now, John Shulman was arrested in Pittsburgh for being a rare book thief, and up until then, his word was relied on by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and by the community of artists at the Warhol in the defamatory campaign about me. So he used to have Abby Hoffman's book in his window. When I came in, he'd look at it and look at me very suggestively. That was to steal this book. Now, of course, I wasn't going to steal a book from a bookstore where I knew somebody. I don't like to steal things any more than anyone else does. So, although as a child I was tortured into compulsory performances, I could no longer say resist because they were using lethal violence on me, of showing that I would obey them. We moved to get away from that, and I did restorative obeisances, but I shouldn't have had to, because this were things that were being done to me compulsorily, very small things. I took a rusty old bike from my family in the night, trembling with terror, because somebody told me I had to. So, it's not something I did, as an adult. The adults that were doing things to me, Benny Platt was 3 years older than me. Benny and the drug lords of the neighborhood told me to take strawberry mescaline. It was very mellow, and they upped the ante with purple microdot. And then they gave me the laced acid that you see has left me looking like a Hiroshima victim in some light. And these were people who did things to me as a 12-year-old who I wouldn't have dreamed of doing to a full-grown adult. And yet they get away with it, they say, because I'm a liar and saying that I didn't want to steal the book from the window of Shulman. I didn't. Fripp played the same game when I was in Wimborne Dorset Chain Library. He left out a pamphlet that would have been tempting to pick up and look at, but of course I was in a medieval chain library. I wasn't going to touch anything. But it was more like an insult to me to do that than a temptation. So what they do is they say that by stealing a man's life and stealing and demanding a man's name and legacy, they are somehow protecting the sacred penny of the AIDS victims. And, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has their ideas of what are good um, charities. When I got a check from my mother, they made sure I had UNICEF in my mailbox, Tacoma Rescue Mission in my mailbox, and Catholic communities in my mailbox. I don't see Walk for Rice. The tragedy in Chinatown of COVID caused a man to lose his wife and his mother. I don't see Walk for Rice being promoted by them. They don't want me to have more space, and they don't want me to have more safety, more time for myself, more thinking time, space, safety, place to do my work. Because one of their objectives through this whole nightmare has been to attack me in the domestic zone. These are people who say they're fighting for the soul of America, but they devoutly believe that America has no soul. They've waged holy war through the unholy as they see it, planting their rationale for the murder of the Kennedys and the AIDS attack in Neva pornographic cinema. So you have these people who have committed crime after crime, and the victims shy away from forming any kind of lobby to have it rationally investigated. They don't want the FBI killing their nieces or burning their house down, which is what would happen in a case like this. The FBI have been extremely criminal when it comes to me and what happened to me. So you have a case like Christine, right? Larry gets thrown out of his girlfriend's house after her brother dies mysteriously, and I had visited and we had hit it off and talked about my mysteries. She's a Washington State nurse. And she kicks him out. He says, I don't even know what I did. Well, maybe she thinks you in some way drew attention to her brother and got him killed. Dr. Brody was Swedish. He is a suspect in the way I was poisoned in my heart. He had a gang at a bar next to Babyland in Pittsburgh where the men who kidnapped and tortured me would tell me to wait outside while they went in and conversed for hours, and I would be out freezing in the telephone booth, going out of my mind with fright. So we know that there's some question. He's drug prone and in good with the Capitol Hill lobby who poisoned people, and Harvey Goldner died of a mouth problem. They poisoned me in my mouth. Supposedly I spoke wrong about him or something. I didn't even know who he was. I was made a joke about someone mistaken identity. So honesty isn't a consideration. These are abnormalists. And Richard Rahm, who offered me a place to leave other than what they had set up for me in Seattle when they lured me here, died abruptly of a heart attack, and his girlfriend found my poetry book and made it a point. She was an exception. She's deaf. Deaf people have been occasionally exceptions. Contacted me and said, "Who are you?" And she told me that right before he died, it was very mysterious. There were all of these flashing police lights right before he had the heart. There were all these floodlights of police activity. So it was a strange thing, but nobody sticks together in looking into these things. So what they do is set up a tribute system where, when a black person who I have nothing to do with this brought to my attention, there's nothing I could have done. It was thousands of miles away. I knew nothing about it. And then they kill a white girl to, balance the ledger in their minds. And they call this some kind of equity, some kind of justice. It's abnormal. And it comes from this idea that, any bad black is better than any good white or something weird like this, I don't understand that. And it works the other way around, too, as everyone knows. There's no white truth, black truth. White racism, black racism. I don't really agree with the idea. There's dignified rules and undignified rules. And it's an undignified rule not to follow civil process. But where Jay Inslee comes in is he comes in with Peter Gabriel and the mind readers, and they're like, what does the queer bait want with all of this rumor mongering? So they stage an incident fake, where somebody who I was, you know, indignant was angling at me as somebody who doesn't tribute my credibility as an individual to take all people seriously and deem someone I don't know as innocent of wrongdoing if they haven't done anything wrong that I know of. And they say that, what I want secretly is to see secret justice acted out based on, like the chopping block of the Sony elevator that cut that woman in half. It's like a demonic thing in somebody's imagination. So they're selling Penis Gabriel's notion of cosmic agenda itinerary, the shuffling of the neighborhood to put tributes of logic, a Kabbalah, Kabbalah Harris situation. And what they don't explain is that you're saying that to oppose the people who killed Martin Luther King is an act of racism. Because that's what they're doing. These black people like Obama who were promoted by the Neva Confederacy over a one-night stand that had no insult to any black person, no insult to any Indian person. The girl had set it up as part of the Adair campaign when they launched the AIDS attack. And they were setting up this war game with these misfit warmongers from Tacoma who say that the symbol, the logo is everything, and they've been after our campus sexual freedoms. Now they've got them with their behavioral modification. They bounce away the COVID thing, and now we have to keep 6 feet apart. So that's the end of the argument. But it was a planned geriatricide too, and the Black Lives Matter blackmail was herd mentality, get them into the streets to protest something that they had nothing to do with, could do nothing about. What Black Lives Matter when you spread a geriatricide that's going to take the lives of all of these elderly black people? What's this about Black Lives Matter when you support an ARC system of the British that killed Martin Luther King? It doesn't make sense. But it does make sense to the minds that say that, Brother Catano's black gangster had all the money in the end. And then pour out all of these fascist horror German swastikas and call them a sacred African symbol. It's ridiculous. But if you look at this, system of thinking, you find that they created social Darwinism that came also from the queer community, when they announced that there was going to be a bounty for winning the book that they're stealing, and it were over a penny. And so they cosmically conceived of this notion of positive, negative, and plus 1 penny means you die, you must have HIV. Okay, so this is like this monetarist steal, this book, conceptioning. And it's all based on the reasoning of the idea that it doesn't matter. You don't have to warn people, you don't have to tell them, you don't have to protect them, you just have to be a social Darwinist queer with HIV who wants the Trump pot of gold. And they slashed and murdered Shan Harp. She didn't have any more to do with it than I did. But she was the white on the white, and they had a white person do it. And so the Green Party can get these things done from white or black and claim, when they do, that it represents the black man or represents the queer because they have one of each. It's like a little legal syndicate who have a smorgasbord of these kinds of symbols. And people can't tell them apart because they're brainwashed to think it doesn't matter what you are internally. All that matters is whether you serve, the great gods of symbolism. So the Ku Klux Klan has, always endorsed black separatists. I mean, Marcus Garvey used to get together with them. That's no secret from history. So all of these, collaborators who, steal the book and then say that it's compulsory that you go along with them. One of the people says, "I'm going to hold you to your to your to your belief that we should be philanthropic as a society." How are they going to do that? They're going to steal my name and throw it to the wolves. They're going to make attack me in my domestic tranquility, rob me of my right to have children, and so on. And that's what they call um, Christianity. So what all this boils down to is the idea of the strong prevailing. It's Penis Gabriel had a song that said, "The weak must die according to nature's law." Okay, well, children are weak. Is he saying children have to die? I mean, they want to throw our school, close our schools, throw us into the streets, right? So the weak must die, and this makes sense to the mind of the strong. Oh, it made sense to Hitler. The swastikas of Africa. It makes sense the strong will survive. And you can't get anybody to investigate. When the Blue House was shot up, and people were leaving, the now of Penis Gabriel on the sidewalks who did the shooting, I suggested to the police that we talk over what's going on. Oh, no, we won't talk with you, Matt Crew. So it's always no, we won't talk about it, no. And so they come in and they set up a chain killing, which they say comes from my moral imagination. I will be satisfied with a revenge from the inner demon. That's false reasoning. It's an attempt to say it all has to be silenced. We were justified in killing innocent people because it snuffs the symbol and makes the little status quo of the, ideological war toy that's at work go tick 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 tick, and then they will be all together now.